Well, greetings, fellow Spyder riders. This is Dave with Ozarks Spyder Rides. And today we're going to talk about this pesky little thing called drive belt alignment. And then we'll also talk a little bit about drive belt tension. There's a lot of misinformation out there on spyderlovers.com and also other forums about how to tighten these belts. And I'll show you the reason the information's messed up, because there's more than one type of belt and there's more than one set of tensions. In fact, when I called my dealer after I began to check my belt tension, they didn't realize that, and they were setting them all to one tension, which turned out to be wrong. So I've got the three manuals that show the three different belt tensions, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I've set up a little belt demonstration here on the bench. So we're going to move up to the bench and I'll show you how to align your belt, and it's really pretty easy. Okay, we're on the bench now and I've got my simulation laid out. This is just a timing belt that I cut in two, left over from a CNC project that I did, and a scrap bearing, and it's big enough to look like the rear sprocket on the Spyder. And of course, you can imagine that's what it would look like if you were looking at the back of the Spyder. So when I bought my 2018 Spyder RT Limited, the belt was running tight against the flange, and so it needed to be adjusted. A lot of people are intimidated to do this. It's not hard to do at all. And so I think this little demonstration will make it easier for you to understand how to do it. Forget about the top of the belt and the top of the pulley. What you want to do is visualize this belt as being a road, the bed, road bed, if you will. This is your front tire on a car. And so if you can think of those terms, then belt alignment gets real easy. Obviously, if you turn the nose of the wheel or turn your steering wheel to the right, then the car is going to run off to the right, and the road's going to be at the left. Okay, so if you need to move the belt off of the flange, then you need to bring the tensioner on the right side back, which means you need to tighten it. Now, a quarter of a turn at a time is usually enough, unless you're way out to start with. But go slow. Sometimes an eighth of a turn is all you need. Of course, you have to loosen the axle nut. Don't forget to tighten it back. It's 166 foot-pounds for the 2018 Spyder RT Limited. So if I pull that back a quarter of a turn, then the nose of the sprocket now is pointing to the right of the belt, which means the belt will move over to the left. And if I want to do just the opposite, if it's too far away from the flange, then I need to loosen counterclockwise the tensioner, put my wrench on, tap it with a dead blow hammer, because it will not move up by itself. Don't forget to tap it forward after you loosen it. And then the nose will point left and the belt will move toward the flange. Now, these are exaggerated moves, obviously, and it doesn't take very much to move it. And as you drive down the road, this belt will actually move just a little bit. And I want to cover a little bit of discussion on that, because if you've seen the manual, the operator's manual, you've probably seen this picture where it says that the drive belt should run in the middle of that sprocket. Well, it doesn't in most cases, and I went up to the dealership and I looked at a lot of new Spyders, and none of them were running in the middle of the sprocket. Now, I think there's a reason BRP is doing it. If you visualize how that front sprocket looks, if this belt is running against that left flange, then it's captured between that left flange and the right flange of the rear sprocket, and it cannot run off. It may rub a little bit. It's not going to hurt anything as long as it's not rubbing hard. If they're seriously out of line and they're rubbing hard, you can heat the belt and you can cause some significant damage. But don't worry if your front sprocket, if the belt's running to the outer edge or the left edge of your front sprocket. So now let's talk about belt tension. Because if you mess with alignments, you're going to mess your tension up somewhat. And when I got my new 2018 Spyder RT Limited, I started checking the belt tension, because I could flick the belt. I could tell this thing was just way too tight, and it was about 1,400 newtons. So I went to the dealer and I started asking some questions about belt tension, and there was a lot of confusion. And I noticed there's a lot of confusion out on the Spyder forums as well. And a lot of them are trying to set them with these cricket meters, these little push cricket things. And I've got both sets, the low one and the high one. And what I found out very quickly is the correct tension for the 2018 Spyder is actually out of range for either one of them. So some of you guys have said you've bought these and you can't get a reading. Well, that's why. They're out of the range of those crickets. Some of the older Spyders, yes, it worked just fine. And that's why you'll find that on Spyder Lovers forum that they're using those crickets to set them. It's because there's 3 different tensions, 2 different belt types. So I actually had the dealer send me the printouts of the different belt types and the correct tensions. And I don't know if you can see these or not. I'm going to try to hold them up for you. But the proper drive tension for the 2018 Spyder RT is 1,050 newtons plus or minus 50 newtons. Simple enough. But if you have an F3, then the correct tension for it is 775 newtons plus or minus 150. And then the dealer found another manual, and it just said for the T and the limited, and it says it's 775 plus or minus 150. So why the difference? It depends on which belt type you have on the machine that you own and that you're trying to adjust. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to find out, probably from your dealer, and in my case they didn't really know, but you're going to have to find out either from the dealer or the online manuals which belt you have and which tension is correct for your Spyder. Once you find that out, setting belt tension's actually pretty easy. Now, I don't own the expensive Gates belt meter. Most people do not. They're almost $800. But being a mechanical engineer and I'm retired, I got with some guys and we worked up some belt Spyder tension numbers, and you might be able to read some of these. I'm holding them up pretty close to the camera. But I discovered that I could do my belt tension in hertz. And I'm going to pause the camera for a little bit and get my cell phone out, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, if you go to Play Store, you can find for most of your cell phones, if it's not an Apple, I don't know if there's an Apple version of this or not, but the Android version is called Gates Carbon Drive. And they actually made this program for high-end bicycles that use a Gates carbon fiber belt. But all it does is it checks frequency, and it's extremely accurate. I've checked my belt tension multiple times, and I do the 3-spoke method just like the manual says we're supposed to do. But this is what the app looks like. And it will give you multiple readings, and you can check it over and over and over, and you can do the multiple checks on each spoke. Now, when I first got my Spyder, the belt tension was way too high. It was 1,440 newtons. And I've lowered mine down to the lower end of the spectrum. I'm around about 900 newtons, which comes in somewhere about 33 hertz. And I've driven all kinds of speeds, and I've been driving it now for about 2,000 miles, and I have absolutely no belt vibrations at all. So that's working well for me. Your sweet spot may be a little different, but that's working really, really well for me. So the cricket meters, I've tried them. I can't get them to work for the 2018 Spyder because I'm a little out of range, even on the high one. So at 33 newtons, I'm at about 220 or 230 foot-pounds. My calculations might be off just a little bit. I did get some help on those, so I'm hoping they're right. But it really doesn't matter. If you get your bike and you know the belt tension's right, use the Gates Carbon belt drive app, find out what it is. Once you find out what it is, then you can check it as often as you need to. One caveat though is it will vary a little bit between extremely cold days and extremely hot days. On hot days, it's going to be a little bit looser, so the hertz will be a little lower. On cold days, it's going to be a little bit tighter. So I do mine in the shop at about 70 degrees, and I check it ever so often, and it stays real constant. So I'm real happy with that. So that'll conclude this shop video, and I hope you found that helpful. I hope that clears up some of the misunderstandings about belt tensions. The rear wheel alignment thing is just dead nuts easy. There's nothing really difficult about that at all, so you don't need to be afraid of it. Just jack the rear wheel up and spin the wheel and take your time. It's not hard to do. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, we'll do some more of them. And as always, ride safe and keep your Spyder in good shape.